Lion trapped in a poacher's net. What the villagers did next was heroic. A low, eerie growl echoed through the trees. In the dense brush, a lion, majestic and powerful, was trapped, its limbs twisted in a poacher's net. Its usual regal demeanor was replaced by panic and pain as its sharp claws scraped uselessly against the ropes that bound it. This was no ordinary lion. It was the pride's protector, a king with a golden mane that shimmered like a beacon against the dust. His every movement, calculated and graceful, was now reduced to desperate thrashing. His name was Zubari. The savannah, usually a world of predators and prey, had fallen into a momentary silence as Zubari's roars of pain reverberated through the plains. The poacher's net, an instrument of human greed, had ensnared him in its cruel grasp. The net's coils dug deep into his flesh, a silent symbol of the war being waged between nature and man. In the distance, a village sat nestled against the horizon, unaware of the lion's struggle. But as Zubari's growls echoed, the villagers, especially an elderly woman named Amara, felt the weight of his pain. Something in her heart stirred. She had witnessed the delicate balance of life in the savannah for years, but this moment felt different. This wasn't just a lion caught in a trap. This was a call to action. Amara grabbed her walking stick, her heart pounding in her chest. "We cannot let this lion suffer," she whispered to herself, determination setting her features into a mask of resolve. She knew that saving him would not be easy, but it was necessary. She wasn't just a villager. She was part of the land, part of the spirit of the wild. And if Zubari had a chance to survive, she would ensure that the villagers did what they could to help. As Amara made her way toward the heart of the village, the scene in the savannah grew even more desperate. The mighty lion, now cornered by the net, began to claw at the ground in fury, his eyes wild with fear and rage. His body was covered in dirt and sweat, his sides heaving with each breath. But just as hope seemed to flicker out, a figure emerged from the brush. A young man, Kofi, a hunter by trade, had heard the roars and understood what was at stake. He had seen poaching in the area before, but this was different. The lion wasn't just an animal in need of control. It was a symbol, a living embodiment of the wild spirit. He had never seen one of the pride's leaders in such a vulnerable state, and it broke his heart. Kofi knelt down, his brow furrowed, his mind racing. He could feel the weight of the moment. There was no time to waste. Amara had grown up in this village, nestled at the edge of the savannah, where the land whispered ancient secrets, and the wind carried tales of old. She had seen the lions, the elephants, the rhinos, creatures that embodied both the beauty and the harshness of life. Her heart had always been tied to these creatures, for her ancestors had lived in harmony with them for generations. But over the years, the land had changed. Poachers had become more ruthless, and the government's control over the land had waned. The villagers, once united in their respect for nature, now faced a growing conflict. Many were afraid of the wildlife, seeing it as a threat to their crops and safety. Yet, Amara remained steadfast in her belief that the animals were part of the land's soul. Kofi, on the other hand, had been born into the village, but his life had taken a different turn. He had grown up in the shadow of his father, a skilled hunter who taught him the ways of survival. But unlike his father, who had little sympathy for the wild creatures they hunted, Kofi had always felt a strange pull toward them. The older he grew, the more he understood the delicate balance between hunter and prey. But it wasn't just his father who shaped him. His encounters with the lions and other predators of the savannah had left a lasting impression on his heart. As a child, Kofi had witnessed the pride's leader, Zubari, hunting. He had been mesmerized by the lion's power and grace, the way it moved through the tall grass, its eyes never losing focus on its prey. There was something almost sacred about it. And now, as an adult, Kofi felt that same sense of awe and a sense of responsibility to protect. Amara and Kofi's lives had intersected in many ways over the years. They had shared stories of the land, of the animals, and of the growing tensions between nature and man. It was in their shared passion for the wild that they had found an unspoken bond. Kofi had always been skeptical of the villagers' ability to coexist with the wildlife, but Amara's persistence had begun to change his heart. She had convinced him that it wasn't enough to simply survive. They needed to protect what remained. Now, with Zubari in peril, their shared mission had never been more urgent. Kofi made his way through the underbrush, moving quickly but carefully. His hands were steady, but his heart raced as the roars of the trapped lion grew more frantic. He could feel the weight of his decision pressing down on him with every step. When he finally arrived at the scene, the sight of Zubari struggling against the net struck him like a blow to the chest. The lion's golden eyes met his, filled with pain and fury. Kofi knew that getting too close would be dangerous. The lion was terrified and confused, but he also knew that this was a rare opportunity to make a difference. As Kofi approached, he spoke softly, his voice barely above a whisper. "Zubari, it's me. You know me." The lion's body tensed at the sound of his voice, its muscles rippling with the instinct to fight. But there was something in Kofi's words, something in the way he spoke, that seemed to calm the lion, even if just for a moment. Amara arrived shortly after, her walking stick tapping softly on the ground as she came to stand beside Kofi. She took in the scene before her with wide, worried eyes. "We need to act quickly," she said, her voice filled with urgency. Kofi nodded, his hands moving to the net. "I've got it. We need to free him before he hurts himself." Amara helped Kofi cut through the net, her hands trembling with both fear and determination. The tension in the air was palpable as the lion's eyes never left them. Every muscle in his body was coiled, ready to spring, but something in his gaze began to change. He no longer saw them as enemies. He saw them as something else. But would that trust last long enough for them to save him? With each minute that passed, the tension between human and animal dissolved. As Kofi carefully worked to free Zubari's trapped leg, Amara moved closer, speaking softly to the lion in a language of calm and reassurance. Her words, though soft, were firm with the weight of the centuries of knowledge she carried. Finally, with one last cut, the net fell away, leaving Zubari free, but not unscathed. He staggered to his feet, his legs wobbly from the strain, but there was no sign of aggression in his posture. He simply stood there, his breathing heavy, his golden mane swaying in the wind. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Zubari took a cautious step forward, his eyes meeting Kofi's with an intensity that seemed to speak volumes. It was as if the lion had finally understood that the humans who had freed him were not his enemies. He had been given a second chance, and he had chosen to trust. As night fell, the villagers gathered, their faces filled with awe as they watched. The lion moved toward them, still cautious but no longer fearful. Kofi and Amara stood together, knowing that they had done something extraordinary, that they had bridged the gap between humanity and the wild. In the months that followed, Zubari became a symbol of hope and resilience. The villagers, once divided over the issue of wildlife conservation, had found common ground in their shared bond with the lion. And Zubari, in turn, had become something more than a mere animal. He was a reminder of the delicate balance that existed between man and nature. Amara and Kofi's actions sparked a movement, a quiet revolution in the hearts of the villagers. They began to see the wildlife not as a threat, but as a vital part of their world, one that deserved their protection and respect. Years later, Zubari's story was told far and wide, becoming a testament to the power of compassion, courage, and the unbreakable bond between humans and nature. And as the sun set over the savannah once more, Kofi and Amara stood side by side, watching as Zubari and his pride roamed free, a symbol of the hope that could rise from the ashes of destruction.